new kitten.
And 35W South, and what else do you own, Joe?
I'm taking over. I really quickly, the song that we do for our intro, every time I pull it up, it's on a compilation album called Songs That Won Us the War, like World War II. And I almost feel like maybe we should have lost if that's the case, but that's a topic for a different day.
I love that song.
Yeah,
you gotta let it roll longer so that say, "What do you know, Joe?" And I don't know nothing. You know.
It sums up this show, at least on my end.
Yeah, it's great.
Just throwing things against the wall to see what sticks. Speaking of Joes, that's a good segue. Mr. Joe Oberle is here as well, and he is the editor of all of our stuff. And if I own 35W, he's also responsible for the construction. So send your email that way. We haven't really talked. It's been a hectic week. Like what? I know the answer to this because I know you well enough, but we have a lot of new listeners, so on and so forth. There's been a lot of polarization in regards to the Vikings. A lot of people panicking in regards to the offense / Cousins' performance on Saturday, and other people saying like, yeah, that's what the preseason is for. It's not that big of a deal. I just rewatched the game right now. Like it's midway through the third quarter, and having seen it again, yikes. Yikes.
Yeah, I was at the game in fan mode, and boy, I tell you, I had the struggle for the first half of the first quarter, getting used to not being in the press box. I didn't like it. No one was in my seat, so I was kind of bitter about that. But that's beside the point.
The seat was just open. That's almost worse.
That's right. First, I thought someone was in there, and my brother goes, "Oh, that makes you mad." And I said, "Oh God, no one's there." He goes, "That's worse." I go, "Yes, it is. Should be me." But you know, I'm not in panic mode. Let's start off with that headline. But you know, it's certainly wonderment, concern, like what's going on. You keep hearing after the game, last couple games, Cousins saying, "Oh, I got to play better than that." Well, yeah, you do, and I'm all beginning to wonder: can you play better than that? I mean, I know we can. And
he's shown it, but
he did. Yes, he didn't have all his weapons and all. You can all make all his excuses. And someone made a point. I want to say it was Bursich or somebody on that says, they started out like this in the preseason last year, and then when they get things cranked up for the regular season, it would be better. Of course, everybody else cranks up too.
Yeah,
I don't know. I just was. I was so bored at that game, and I put it in my story, and I know you read it, Joe. How my brother and I were fascinated by the overhead cam. It goes back and forth.
I said it summed up that game perfectly. Like you were not even at a certain point. People should read it. It's on both websites, Purple PTSD Vikings Territory. You were paying more attention to that crazy camera that zips overhead than the game itself. Which, again, it sums up what happened. My thing with the rationalization, Bursich was now that you brought up Bursich, he said this a lot during the game. Cousins is struggling because the Cardinals are throwing a lot at him, a lot of stunts, a lot of shifts. And towards the halftime, he mentioned, Cousins is adjusting now. But it's but that's what they do in the regular season. So
right, even worse.
And the game, it just... And I've been a Cousins apologist. I was a big proponent of him coming here. And I'm not going to make excuses for the guy. I mean, even I've said it this offseason, there's no room for excuses anymore. The offensive line has depth. They might not be 100% or gelling. I mean, he was sacked a couple times. First time in the preseason, there's been a lot of pressure. But you could just tell that first pass where Diggs had a step on that guy down the field and he overthrew him by 5 yards, that kind of summed up the game. It's like his timing was off. He was like a split second behind. He was running slow. And you mentioned just like him saying things after the game, like he said, I got to be better. He kept saying we, then he said, no, I have to be better. And then he was like, I'm going to be really cranky with my wife as if it's her fault. And it's like, he's polished media-wise. He says the right things, but at some point you have to be better, and it's just...
That's the only way this team's going to make the next move. You're right, Joe. He has to be better. And, they do have a better offensive line in front. It's not lights out, greatest offensive line ever. It's going to be better. And Dalvin Cook, as you will probably talk about, looked great, and Thielen has looked great in preseason. If he could hit Diggs on a couple passes, he would look great.
I mean, Diggs is so dangerous. He had the one catch towards halftime that was just like, yeah, Diggs is good. What's the problem?
The opportunity is there for him, and you need your quarterback, making those passes. I mean, he'll thread some in there that you just go, man, this guy's the bleep. But and then he'll miss screen pass, touch passes, and then he'll the one overthrown on Diggs that you mentioned by 4 or 5 yards. My jaw just dropped. I go, oh my god.
Yeah. Something was wrong, and I
could do that.
Yeah, I thought. Just things being a little hectic on my end with the new kitty and other things that, I took a day and a half off of really being in depth with the news and going on Bleacher Report and checking all that stuff. And it just feels like I felt like something was going to come out that was going to solve my anxiety. Like Cousins had West Nile or something. And I brought up the fact that people say it's the preseason, but for him to go 3 of 13 and have -5 yards passing with 2 minutes left in the first half, that's disastrous. And the argument goes both ways with it being the preseason. Granted, the Cardinals were doing some regular season level stuff, but they weren't showing all their hands either. And
they're not the 85 Bears.
It's just like you can't. I think he summed it up by saying, if I play like this during the season, it's going to be a tough year. And we could fast forward to 2 weeks ago, and I was really optimistic about this team, and that optimism is gone. It's been replaced with genuine concern. And a lot of people are saying, well, Thielen didn't play, but you can't throw the ball to Thielen 100% of the time. And there were drops. BB, I don't know what's going on with him either. A lot of people are talking about Olabisi Johnson being the 4th receiver. They got rid of Jordan Taylor, which we'll talk about in a second. And maybe Olabisi Johnson is the 3rd receiver, which would be really exciting. But yeah, there's no excuse for going 3 of 13 with that contract, or just in general, and it's just going to create more problems with this huge fan push and writer push for Kyle Sloter, which we talked about last week, but we'll touch on again this week. People are going to look at Sloter. I mean, Vikings fans love backup quarterbacks anyway. The push for people to call for Sloter, if this is how they play week 1, is going to be huge. And I almost, the 4th preseason game, typically they don't play. But I would really feel a lot more comfortable if they did a series or two and it went well going into the regular season.
Do you know why Vikings fans like second-string quarterbacks?
Why?
Because we've never had a first-string quarterback.
Yeah. I thought, yes.
It's really something. I mean, you mentioned his contract. I mean, it's irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't matter. Yeah. He's the starter. And he should play like a starter. And he did that first series in the first preseason game, and since then, the second one was a head scratcher for the most part. This one was like, oh my goodness, what the heck's going on here? So
yeah, it's not a good trend. Yeah, and it's not just that either. I mean, it is, but there's, like I said, there was a couple drops. The kicking game is borderline nightmarish at this point. Is that you?
Are you still there?
Yeah, it must have disconnected and reconnected you. Like I said, I was just saying the kicking game is a nightmare too. But let's get into some other news stuff really quickly. The big talker this week, obviously, is that Mike Hughes is back. They removed him from the PUP list. Word is that he'll be ready for week 1, which is almost hard to put an emphasis on how important that's going to be. A lot of people, myself included, and you too, obviously, have been concerned about depth at the cornerback position. Mackenzie Alexander's been hot and cold. Before we talk about Hughes, there was a play where in the first quarter the receiver got behind Xavier Rhodes and picked up a first down. And I think Burstich basically said, I know it's the preseason, but you can't let that receiver get behind you. Rhodes looked really gimpy, and the concern with him has been in recent seasons his health and his ability to stay healthy. And there's a lot of talk about whether or not he feigns injuries or not. But he looked really gimpy. He didn't look like himself, and by himself I mean like 2 seasons ago. So I don't know if you've heard what is wrong with him.
Nope, nobody has, and everybody's concerned. I sat there and watched him. I said, "What's going on?" I mean, this was Xavier, because he was throughout the preseason he had been a step behind, and as Burchick said, he used to have the speed to catch up after a guy he jammed somebody and he gets a step on him, and he could catch up and make the play, and he wasn't doing that. I saw him Adam Thielen running roughshod on him in OTAs when I was still allowed to hang around the TCO. So from that point to this, I just he looks like he kind of did last year when we were all wondering what's wrong with him, and we knew that he was having injuries then, but he's got to be injured, because I don't think he's too old yet. I know he's not that slow. I don't think he just fall off that quickly.
No, and he visibly had a limp.
He's got to be injured. So, and maybe they're just so tired of him limping here or limping there, or Zimmer says he's got this nickname for him regarding his injuries. So I don't know if it has something to do with him being soft or whatever, or just a drama queen when about this stuff. So
what's his nickname?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows, Joe.
That's not good. You could see him limping. I do recall around OTAs, us internally, the writers, our team talking about his injuries, and hopefully that's not. It was basically just exasperation. It's really early, and if he's already injured, it's going to be a long year for him. Which brings up my next point. Trey Waynes is underrated. I'm kidding. I have been bringing that up every week if people don't get the reference. But yeah, it's disconcerting, but the good news is that Hughes is going to be ready for week 1. I
wouldn't start him.
No, and typically, as we found, I think a lot of us got spoiled by the AP timetable for ACLs, and even what RG3 tried to rush his way back, and that didn't work, obviously. But it takes a year after, really, for players to get back to square one, and I've just been there was a lot of talk this offseason in regards to Hughes or Mackenzie Alexander about trading Trey Waynes or Xavier Rhodes and filling in with one of those guys. And now I do think that Hughes looked really good in the sample size that we had, but it was a really small sample size. And I'm not completely sold on him. There's nothing he's done wrong, but I think that just historically the DBs have a really big learning curve when it comes to Zimmer's defense, and so, like you said,
I was just going to say he kind of busted that learning curve, and Zimmer said that last year. So
that's true. And then did he dial it back a little bit?
Oh, I think he did, because he felt embarrassed. He was praising so much one of his players because
no, that's not his style. Yeah.
No. I go by the coaches on this kind of thing. You said you're right. It's a small sample size, but the coaches love this guy. They're high on him. They took him in the first round. Zimmer never has enough cornerbacks. I think he's going to be very good. And there's a lot of people say he could be a star in the league. So I think you bring him back slow. You work him back in, and maybe it makes it easier to if Xavier doesn't. Get his stuff together. Maybe you're not hurting so much by mid-season that you can slide Hughes in there or something. But
at least give him some time to recuperate.
Right.
You don't have the gun against your head where you need him to play, and then just keep perpetuating something that maybe could be solved in a week or two. Speaking of that, so where do you see him fitting in on this defense? Do you see him playing some slot to spate Mackenzie Alexander to start, or do you see him Holton Hilling it and filling in on the outside more?
I see Holton Hilling it, to coin a phrase there, because they really like Mackenzie Alexander now. He's been in the system, I think, 3 years now, and he's getting the plaudits from Zimmer for finally having figured it out and growing up and maturing and being a professional. So they're really doing what he wants, even though I saw him get burned once or make a mistake earlier this preseason. But I think he'll be your slot guy, and they'll slide in Hughes both in the slot and on the corners wherever they need him, just to get him back in. And he hasn't played live bullets since midway through last season or even before.
Yeah,
I think he played six games. Yeah, so he's got to bring him back slow, let him get back up to the speed of the game, because all he's been doing is rehabbing. But it's great to have him back, like you said earlier. It's great to have Linval Joseph back, even though he didn't play. Harrison Smith didn't play, Thielen didn't play, and that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. Get yourself ready for the regular season, and it doesn't. So I don't know where to sum up here, other than the fact that I'm excited that Hughes is back.
Yeah, it'll be nice to have Brian O'Neill back too.
Yep.
Sounds like that is happening. I think Rashad Hill's played better than he has historically. But yeah, I really want that line to get as much time as they can together and coalesce.
You're right. Bit. He's another one that needs to get in there and get some live reps. And he started out the preseason, but he's been gone for a while, so he's got to build back up. It's unfortunate. That's the thing about injuries. You're out, you miss all that time, and when you get back on the field, you might not be ready. You're not going to be back to where you were, so it takes a little while.
Totally. I feel like I'm going to name this show something funny, just because it's a lot of doom and gloom on all these topics, and it's not intentional, even though sometimes I do that for effect. The kicking situation.
This should be selling hope time of year, right, Joe? And we're kind of going backwards. We're as far as the Vikings are concerned, they've digressed during the preseason. They don't seem to be ramping up, and that's a little unfortunate. But maybe they'll take some people by surprise.
I'm hoping so. I don't know. There's been exasperation from Zimmer a few times. Talking about the young receivers stepping up, that was part of it a week and a half ago. But this week it seems that he's just really reached his limit in regards to the kicking situation. The quote that really sums it up was that since they brought in, traded a fifth rounder, which is a big deal in the kicking game, especially if you're going to just have the guy punt. Since they brought in Kari Vedvik, he's missing kicks after being perfect 4 for 4, which it doesn't mean much, in the last game that he had with the Ravens, and it looks like Matt Weil is, according to Zimmer, kicking really well, and Dan Bailey's been perfect this preseason. I think he's made all 6 of his kicks, extra points and field goals. So, I never expected, and we've discussed this already, I never expected him to replace Bailey, just talking about how important this season is and some of the frustrations that Zimmer's had going with a complete unknown who's also, more of a punter than a field goal kicker. At least he was in college, and his age, it just seems like maybe they'll bring him in for 55 or longer kicks, because his field goals, that 48-yarder, it's almost as if he did it like a chip shot or something. You know what I mean? Like he didn't.
It's effortless.
Yeah.
It's amazing to watch.
Even though he's missing. But you can tell the dude has a crazy leg. And that could still be the case. It's preseason, it's 2 missed field goals, but, Zimmer basically said, bring this guy in, and the guys that he's supposed to replace are playing amazing all of a sudden, and he's playing not well. And it just kind of perpetuates that idea that whatever the Vikings are doing in the kicking situation, everybody they bring in, Dan Bailey was the second most accurate kicker, was past tense, in the history of the NFL. Now he's not. He was a 75% field goal kicker last year. So it makes you wonder why they spent a 5th-round pick on this guy, to be honest, especially if they never intended for him to be the field goal guy, but more of just like a kicking specialist, kickoffs and punts, maybe not even all the punts. So I don't know. Zimmer said he was at a loss. I'm at a loss. So help me.
Yeah, I guess I don't know what they're going to do when you hear stuff like that. But my thought remains that I think because they spent a 5th rounder, they'll keep Vedvik around, and he'll be the kicker of the future, because Bailey's getting pretty old, and he's not gonna, he's probably gonna get, less accurate than more accurate at this point in his career, and. I think Weil's the odd man out. They got to find someone that can hold, but it still seems that they're not settled. at this group, this unit, and that's a terrible place to be at this point in the preseason. That's for sure.
And then if they get rid of Weil, who holds for him if they have him come in and do?
That's what I said. They got BB, they have Thielen that tries, but you didn't see them doing it last week. So I don't know. That's why.
Yeah, and Weil did well.
Oh, I mean, he did fine until they miss one, and then he gets someone blames for it. Who knows? But it's. I was talking to someone recently. Like Zimmer's kind of exasperated. I said I think he's the kind of guy that would like to chew somebody out if they make a mistake, and I don't know if that works with kickers. Because they're kind of head cases, and
really
they, I mentioned this before. I did a story with Ryan Longwell, and we talked a long time about comparing golf to the kicking game. It's muscle memory, and you've got that stationary ball sitting there, and you've got to hit it the same place every time, and they're human beings. It's not going to happen that way, and they've got so much on the line with every kick that there's the pressure gets to you, and you miss. You miss on the golf course, and you miss on a 54-yard field goal. So it's just going to happen, and you got all these guys who've been beating their brains out for 60 minutes, and it comes down to you, and you fail them. I mean, unless you're you don't give a rat's patootie about anybody else in the world, you just go to the bank and cash a check. But most human beings take that on, and it wears on you. Look at Blair Walsh. She signed with the Falcons last week.
I was going to say, speaking of head cases.
Yeah, and he's already missed, I guess yesterday I was saying he missed like 4 kicks or something like that. So
we're facing the Vikings are going to be facing their last two failures. Daniel Carlson next week, and then they're going to be, or not next week.
4 weeks.
4 weeks. I don't know why somebody online said the next 2 weeks, and then I'm like, well, that didn't make any sense. But yeah, they'll be facing them. Blair Walsh too. I mean, I hope things work out for him, but there's a reason that he went from where he was, which is arguably on the path to be one of the best kickers in Vikings history, outside of Fuad Revez, perhaps. And then
Fred Cox.
Okay, yeah, I don't remember him.
I know you don't.
Fuad Revez.
That's what I'm here for, Joe. I'm here to remind you of Fred Cox, the inventor of the Nerf football.
Is that true?
That is true.
Wow, cha-ching. Yeah. Holy crap. I also wonder where Nate Kading is in all of this, because I thought they brought him on to be a kicking coach, and I haven't heard a peep. And maybe that's because I'm not looking in the right places, but whatever he's doing is maybe he should do the exact opposite. And it's fun to see all the Bears fans and the Bears media. A lot of the articles I read this week were from Bears media. They have a new guy there who apparently won the job over the weekend. I rewatched that Cody Parker double doink this morning, and you can see when they called the timeout on the first kick, which he made, you could see it hit from his reaction. He was like, damn it. You could just tell that something bad was going to happen. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Andrew Luck situation as well, and it's our job to look at these things and kind of tie them into the team, which Connor Wickland did on Vikings territory this week, talking about perhaps since the Colts are going to be in rebuilding mode, that the Vikings could perhaps get a guy like T.Y. Hilton, which all respect to Connor because he's a great writer. I don't know if I agree with that, just in terms of chemistry. And he's a top end guy. I mean, when he has a quarterback, he can be a top 5 fantasy receiver. So I don't know how that would work with Diggs and Thielen, but it would be exciting from a Madden build a team perspective.
I don't know if I'd go pick up Andrew Luck's best friend, who just is distraught. I mean, that's what he came out on Twitter saying. This is my best friend, and he's pretty upset that how Andrew Luck got booed. I don't know if I'd pick up that guy. Sounds like a little bit of a, he'd be coming in here and not drinking the Kool-Aid, purple Kool-Aid. He'd still be hungover from the blue and white.
Is that T.Y. Hilton?
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wrote on Twitter when I saw that reaction from the fans that I'm a very emotional Vikings fan, and I write that way, so on and so forth. And so I do get upset, but on a football level, it does impact my emotional well-being for a few days or months, depending on the game. But I don't often get personally upset from a human perspective. I can, obviously just quarter that off in my mind and say it's football. It's not that big of a deal, but it still makes me sad. To see those people do that, I thought was one of the most classless things I've seen. It's obvious. I shouldn't even have to say this, but the guy's 29 years old. He was, anointed as the second coming when he came into the league, and he didn't retire because he was happy. I made enough money. I'm done. Or it wasn't even really like a Robert Smith thing who opined on the situation, where he was like, I'm healthy enough to play, but I don't want to be, disabled the rest of my life. Yep. Yeah. He talked about it really. I mean, this was after he was booed, but I mean, have some common sense. Just the cycle of injury, pain, rehab, the mental aspect of it, of having to do that day in and day out, and then having it happen again. He got injured this preseason, which was the main component of this. And I thought the team did a nice thing by not asking for the rest of his bonus back. He got to keep between 13 and 20-some million that way. People are saying that might be because they expect him to come back if he has a year or two off, because he is only 29 years old. But the point is, it wasn't a frivolous or selfish decision. He said it broke his heart, the decision. And then on top of that, to have fans at home boo you for it is just so gross.
Where was Joe Buck to come in and say, that is disgusting?
That's a disgusting act.
Yes, that was. That's how I felt about it. It's just stupid. Fans do not get it. I mean, unfortunately, we all look at our team that we're cheering for, and we see the quarterback, your star quarterback, who's been injured and hasn't probably given you what you deserve for the ticket price you pay. He hasn't given you, so you're going to boo him when he leaves because now your prospects for this season are gone. Your fantasy team is screwed. Blah blah blah. And I really don't care. Fans just don't understand how brutal this game is physically and how that affects you mentally. I mean, I've heard how many of the players described Monday mornings you felt like you've been into 2 or 3 car accidents,
Yeah.
Imagine that. If you don't, and if all your off season is rehab, when you may have a family, or you want something to do to get away from the grind of a brutal football season, but you can't. You got to get back in there and get your body ready for the next one. It just the guy gave his heart, mind, body, and soul to this team, and they had the audacity to boo, and they had one guy taking off his jersey. I'm surprised he didn't start it on fire right in the middle of the stadium.
Oh, I didn't see that.
And just took his shirt off, his Andrew Luck shirt, like, oh my God, this guy has done the worst thing in the world. He did this to me. I get so tired of it, I don't get emotional that much, but stuff like this just bugs me.
Totally, and there's been a few. I mean, Calvin Johnson did it, and you look at it, it's kind of tied together. But in this day and age, with the medical resources that we have and the level of training, back in the day, guys were drinking 6-packs, and a lot of guys still drink, or Babe Ruth is smoking cigars and crushing homers. These guys train year round. They're in peak physical condition, and if he's that injured all the time, it's something that clearly cannot be remedied, first of all. Second of all, I think there is an aspect of these guys going too far, and I don't think it'll ever be dialed back, but these guys are so big and so strong. Tony Gonzalez was being interviewed the game before last, and he said he's only been retired a few years, and he's like, I'm so happy that I'm not playing. These guys are monsters. And, the human body can only take so much, and that's, I think, why the concussion thing is more prevalent now than ever, because these guys are so fast and so strong that...
Speed and power. Yep.
And I don't see, because everyone's trying to be the best, no one's going to voluntarily just say, hey, let's take it a little bit easier. And so I think there's an aspect to that, too, with, like, Calvin Johnson retiring and other guys. Gronk retiring. They're all
very
sub-30. Yeah.
Yeah, you can only build up so much armor to protect yourself. But when when a player that big comes in, with the speed that the defensive players have, your body's your bones can only be strengthened to such a degree. Your body's, your muscles. It's just people don't realize it. And of all people, the quarterback is just putting themselves out there to get pummeled. They got to hang in the pocket just as these guys are coming down on them and make the throw, and they're still going to get hit. So they're defenseless when they're making a throw.
Yeah.
That's why I think
it is like a car accident, really. It's that traumatic to your body.
Kirk Cousins, after the second half of the season last year, he hung in there for the first half, and then he just became too much, and he got jittery, and his performance went downhill. They're human beings, and they're not hired by the fans. The fans might, foot the bill. I get it. But, look backwards and appreciate what you had rather than be bitter about what you think you just lost.
Do you think there's any chance they go for Teddy?
I don't know. I don't know that the Saints would make him available.
I don't know if they would either.
There's talk about them winning those. SI just picked them to win the Super Bowl, so they're not going to trade away that great of a
insurance policy.
Yeah, because granted, Drew Brees is only injured his shoulder. That's about the only games he's ever missed. As a quarterback, he's pretty durable, but he's old. It only takes one hit on him, and he's going to be on the sideline.
And he's not very big.
No, I wouldn't think they. No, I don't think so. I think you hit it earlier when you said they're going to rebuild. They're probably going to, try to lay down and get that number one pick at quarterback. Are they on the Vikings schedule? Unfortunately not.
So it's funny too. Just to, I know we're talking about this a lot, but there's just so much to it because, obviously one of the highest draft pick the Vikings have ever had was Matt Cleo, the 4th overall pick in 2012, and of the top 5 people in that draft, he's the only one still in the league. So, a lot of people, myself included, back then, I remember playing at TCF Stadium, Joe Webb at quarterback, winning that completely just useless game that had no point, but it knocked the Vikings from being tied for the 1st overall pick down to 4th. And I remember thinking after that amazing season that RG3 had, wow, they could have had luck, they could have had RG3, we would have had our quarterback situation solved. And who knows, in a different if maybe Joe Gibbs wasn't the coach of the Redskins, or he went to a different team, they wouldn't have pushed him to play on that injured knee in the playoffs, and his career could have been completely different. But that draft clearly did not work out for anybody. So it's hard to really complain hindsight-wise about that. But one positive that has come from the preseason, especially lately, has been Olabisi Johnson and his performance. And he, 7th round pick. The Vikings have this knack for finding these late round receivers. They're not very good at finding them in the first couple rounds, but I think a lot of people are saying he's locked. Obviously, he's locked to make the team, but he's locked in the 4th spot. And with Jordan Taylor being cut, which I was a little surprised by, he hasn't played well. He looks slow. He had that drop, which I think sealed the deal. But they didn't. I know they had to make room for Hughes, but they also released what's his face, Benakieri. I was just surprised by it just because of his relationship with Kubiak. But you have a guy like Olabisi Johnson who's just, Zimmer is talking about him in really positive ways, saying that he can line up anywhere. He knows all the spots. I
guess he listened to Zimmer getting bitter earlier in the year at the young receivers then, because he has really stepped up.
And they talked about him in an interview on Vikings.com where he, when he first got on the team, he was studying the playbook 3 times or for 3 hours a night. And I think he had a slip of the tongue because he talked about the importance of route depth and route running for Cousins. Cousins is a perfectionist, as we all know, and that if you start even a yard short, that Cousins will get really. He said Cousins gets really upset, and then he was kind of dot, but that's normal and that's good. But I think he kind of slipped up there a little bit and showed a little bit.
Outed his quarterback
behind the veil a little bit, which does explain Cousins and Thielen's interaction last season, but. Zimmer said, yeah, he can line up anywhere. He runs the right routes. He seems to understand instinctively where the DBs are going to be, how to get leverage over them, so on and so forth. So as far as I'm concerned, I mean, tying in Chad Beebe with this, he had a drop. He hasn't looked from, everyone talking about the offseason that he had. He just hasn't looked that way. And granted, Cousins hasn't played that great either. But he hasn't looked that great in the preseason. So it could be interchangeable. They're different kind of guys. But it sounds like BC Johnson's going to be the third guy. He's already playing with the ones. He's lining up everywhere, which you need the guys to do because Thielen lines up everywhere especially. I'm just excited about it.
It sounds like you are. I saw. I mean, I went to OTAs and I watched his receivers, and I was. If you go back and listen to my comments on it back then, I thought BB was a shoo-in for wide receiver 3, just how he looked. I mean, he was so much quicker than anybody there. He was, granted it was inside, it was in shorts, but he was running great routes. He was getting the ball from Cousins, and that extended well into the season. But what I also noticed there, why is Jordan Taylor on this team?
Yeah.
I couldn't figure it out. And I mean, I saw him compared to everybody else. Now, granted, he hadn't been there; he was learning the routes and the system at the same time where BB had been around a season. So, Jordan Taylor just looked slow. He didn't look strong to me. And I just thought, I knew the whole connection with he was brought in by Kubiak, but I thought I don't get this guy, and so I wasn't surprised. He didn't do much in the preseason. He caught a couple balls, I think, on Saturday. But like you said, he had a drop. And so, to be honest, I'm not saying I predicted it, but I was wondering about him from day one. He just looked to be out of place, whereas BB looked confident and in there. Now, Zimmer makes the comment about his young receivers, and if you're a smart young receiver, you get to work. And I think Olabisi Johnson has, and he has made some dramatic catches, made some great catches, and been solid whenever he's getting an opportunity to make plays. And that's what you want. I don't know what it's like in practice because I'm not out there, but boy, if what we're seeing out in the games is what he's doing behind the scenes, he's going to get plenty of time at that spot. I don't know that they'll, maybe name a particular wide receiver 3. They'll use them both interchangeably.
Especially with the tight ends and Smith Jr. lining up as a wide receiver as well.
But even Beebe, I mean, he's got a different skill set than Johnson, and he's going to be, inside maybe doing, busting off some nice quick crossing routes or button hooks or curls or something, and Olabisi Johnson can maybe stretch the field a little bit more and make catches in the end zone. So I think that's what they'll both make the team. They'll both be in the mix, and Irv Smith as well in the double tight end set. So that to me, I don't think we are going to see any change from what we've seen on Thursday. I think that's kind of decided. It's going to be those guys are all going to get play. I think the more interesting thing to come. There are some other battles that we can still look at in this Thursday game, but that one I think it looks pretty set to me.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of positive talk about Irv Smith Jr. We've talked about this a lot, but there's a lot of stuff this week that I thought really was the writing on the wall in regards to perhaps the team moving on from Rudolph after the season. Just words like complete tight end, how great he is at blocking, but also just being able to line up as a receiver, so on and so forth. So, it's there's a lot of good options, and like I said, when we're talking about this amount of talent in the receiving position as a whole, including tight ends, there's really no excuse for Cousins to be playing the way he did on Saturday. So hopefully they figure that out. Speaking of battles, there's two main things that a lot of people were talking about coming out of the game. I mean, it's been building for Mannion versus Slaughter. We've talked about this a lot. But there was a lot more aggressive tones in some of the articles about Slaughter versus Mannion. There was one on I think Daily Norseman that was basically, does performance matter to Zimmer? And they were comparing him to Belichick and Bud Grant in regards to personnel analysis and whether or not, a lot of people, we talked about this last week, the fact that while Slaughter is a gamer, he's not a complete quarterback in Zimmer's eyes because he can't see the play clock 8 yards in front of his face. He's not good at running a huddle and being a leader and so on and so forth. Well, that doesn't seem to manifest much in the games. I don't see a whole lot of delay games. I remember one. But, people aren't lining up in the wrong spot or whatever. But then I saw other articles of people that were like, the fans are totally rooting. Like, the fans want Slaughter to play with the first team on Thursday. Why won't Zimmer do it? And, that article, the headline, and I'm not disrespecting any other writer because I know how difficult it is, and I know it's our job to state our opinions, and that doesn't necessarily mean that we're always right. But that's not the way it works. It doesn't matter what the fans think, to be completely honest. It doesn't matter what writers think. They might pay more attention to it, but...
except for me.
Yeah, with your empty seat with the cardboard cutout of you. Yeah, that just seems spiteful to me. But
it's not.
I know it totally isn't, and I have a very strong feeling we'll be back next year. I actually understand completely why the team did what it did. They kind of needed to. But yeah, I mean, he's just looking at his numbers from Saturday. Cousins obviously was terrible. 3 of 13 for 35 yards. Mannion was 6 of 9 for 57. Slaughter 6 of 7 for 102 and 1 touchdown. Like his completion percentage is off the charts. He
had a rating of like 158, didn't he? Didn't he have the perfect, or 153? He missed one pass and had this great. It doesn't matter. This one's over. It's Mannion and it's Slaughter, and they may put Browning on the practice squad. I don't know. I won't make that determination until I see him play on Thursday when he will finally get to play. But
just really quickly, because you touched on it, and I mean it is for the backup spot, so it doesn't really matter. It's all theoretical because they shouldn't see the field anyway.
Right, but it does matter who is the backup because you can see him.
Yeah,
they're going to be doing victory formation all season long. No, I'm just kidding.
or the give up formation.
That's it. But it's Mannion has played in the NFL in regular season games, and there's a difference. I think he probably has some of that gravitas that you need to command a huddle, and I think he has all the throws. He might not have the strength of arm of Slaughter, which is everybody gets excited about. But Slaughter's also going against threes. Last week, and you just have to remember that. It would be nice to see what he could do with ones, but it's not going to happen. The ones are not going to play for either team, and that's the most important. You're preparing for the goddamn regular season game. He will not play with the ones. Neither will Mannion. It'll be 2s and 3s on Thursday. So you don't have to worry about that.
And Mannion hasn't been bad either. He's been good. Outside of that interception, which has been argued was BB's fault, another knock against his preseason. Right. He's been good. I mean, they were talking about before the game on Saturday how great the quarterback play has been, how great the completion percentage has been. I mean, I think there was a game where all the quarterbacks were above 100 quarterback rating. Maybe one was at 98 because of the interception being Mannion. But yeah, it's not like he's been bad. And when it comes to a guy, you're not looking for a flashy gamer as your backup. You're looking for old reliable.
Yeah, if I would want anybody to play at the ones, I'd like to see Mannion with the ones, against the ones. But, we're not going to get that either because they're done. For both teams, they're done. So Mannion will be the backup. Slaughter will probably get held because he did have, once again, what do they call him, the captain or the king of the preseason. He'll probably get hung on to. And I don't know. I want to see how Browning looks in live action on Thursday, and we will get that opportunity. We will get that opportunity, so you can make your decision there whether or not they hang on to him or and put him on the practice squad, or cut him. So I don't know.
I really think Dalvin Cook needs to play into the fourth quarter on tomorrow.
What?
He just hasn't shown enough this preseason. I'm kidding.
Okay.
I'm making light of all of my exasperation in regards to him not playing because the turf wasn't ready, and I understood it as a fan. I wanted to see him, and I wanted to make sure he got a couple of hits at least to get him into game shape. And then he comes out and has. I thought that touchdown was his third carry, but all the box scores say 2 rushes. Maybe one was a catch.
Back, Joe.
Oh, it did.
Yeah, one of them got called back by penalty.
So, but he looked in midseason form. I mean, it was that run showed every single why people want him to be healthy, why he's so valuable to this team. I mean, he split those safeties preseason.
Yes, he did. Not preseason, but 3 plays. 3 plays. I mean, we're making all these determinations on Mannion and Cousins and everybody else, and it's such a small sample size. They're playing 2 or 3 series, tops. Now, granted, he played for a half last week. Cousins. Yeah. So you can make a determination of his play on Saturday that it was bad, but I wouldn't go so far as to call Dalvin Cook midseason form yet. We got to see more of him, but he looked great, and that cutback was wonderful. And once he had that step, he was gone. It was the only play worth seeing on Saturday. It was wonderful, but I want to see him play for a half. I want to see him get some hits, get some in there, but we'll have to wait till the regular season.
Or maybe
hopefully
I don't.
He's good to go.
I was a lot of people after the first game with that great first drive the offense had. A lot of people were saying, that same thing. Like it's one drive, whatever. But my argument was, but it could have been a lot worse. I mean, these are the Vikings we're talking about, and then
that's right.
Extrapolate it out, and then it is worse. So I almost just want to freeze in time right now, and live here forever.
Well, then we still wouldn't have a Super Bowl title then.
I've said this before, but I'm I picture things in my mind, and if I can't see it happening, I just don't. It never seems to happen that way. It's hard to explain. It's like a power of mine, or a sign of narcissistic personality disorder, and I just can't see the Super Bowl happening. To be honest, I don't know what I would do with myself. Beyond that, though, I think that the other battle that a lot of people are talking about is Curse versus Harris for the safety spot opposite Harrison Smith. And, we talked a lot about Harris last year and how he was arguably one of the most improved players in the entire NFL. And he's very solid. But Curse is a beast. And it is the preseason, but he's gotten more time with the ones. He was out there with the ones on Saturday. He almost had that pick 6 from Kyler. And what excites me about him more so than Curse is that you could have a formation on defense where, he looks like he's lining up as the safety, and then he drops in to play hybrid linebacker, or vice versa, or supports he played nickel last season. He's huge, but he's adaptable, and he could really do a lot of things, sneaky things that maybe Zimmer, as a defensive mind, is just like licking his chops at. Maybe he isn't the starter, but maybe he's the guy that comes in on these tricky formations where the offense doesn't really know what to do. And I can't remember a time that the Vikings had anybody like that on defense.
Yeah, I think that's I'm not going to go with the Harris versus Curse battle.
Because it's not a zero-sum game?
Well, I think Harris has got the position because he's solid and because he's probably been great at doing what Zimmer wants and playing the team defense. And I'm not saying that Curse isn't. I think he's growing into it. He's a little bit of a wild man out there. He's a very emotional player. And, I'm not going to say that that's less trustworthy, but, I think you want Harris as your solid guy and Curse to come in and really give the offense on the other team something to think about. I mean, you just spelled it out. I mean, if he can just get on the field and disguise coverages because of where he might, I think what a great thing to have. And so I think you're going to see both of them. You're probably going to see more Curse than we have in the past, and he's a great special teams player as well. So I mean, I don't know if I would see him yet supplanting Anthony Harris. I don't see that. And speaking of, putting something on the field for the other team, I did want to say this about Dalvin Cook before we got off it. It was so wonderful to see that on Saturday, just so that other teams that are going to start taking whatever game film they see from the preseason and start using it to prepare for the Vikings, they have to remember how good he is, and that just helps. They have to game plan for Cook as well as Thielen, Diggs, and everything else. I mean that it really, to me, that was the biggest takeaway for me. It's great to get that on film so that they'd have to say, oh shoot, we have to remember this guy.
Big Ten reference. I got it in right before the end of the show. Obviously, I support Big Ten players a lot, and so I've been a big Amir Abdullah guy because he was arguably the best running back in the entire country those 2 seasons in college out of Nebraska. And so I'm a huge fan of his, and I think he's very dangerous. But I also think he's basically a veteran minimum guy and available for a reason. And so I am surprised that there still is this debate as to whether or not it's him or Boone. I think Boone has shown what he can do. He had a great play on special teams, covering a punt, if I recall correctly. Abdullah has done well too. I mean, he looked good returning punts. I thought better than some of the other guys, especially Olabisi Johnson, who almost died doing that. And so I don't know how it's going to shake out. There's a lot of 53-man final projections coming out from our site. We have one on Vikings territory right now. But that having been said, there has been some chatter too with the Houston Texans losing their running back on the, it's such an argument as to why you rest Dalvin Cook, actually, because it was the first run he had, and I'm pretty sure he tore his ACL. I mean, his knee buckled, and they carted him off. And he was a Pro Bowl guy last year. Lamar Miller.
Oh, man. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so the coverage I saw was that it was that night, so they said they're pretty sure it's an ACL, but he's done for the year. So I'm sure that's happening because I've seen a lot of people talking about the Texans trading for a running back, and some people think that might be Mike Boone.
It tells you right there, Mike Boone is, if they would rather have him than Amir Abdullah, that speaks volumes right there. But
I'm not sure what he's worth in this league. I mean, from a draft perspective or a trade perspective.
What would you want for him? Yeah, I mean, what do the Vikings need? They could use some depth positions, but I think having Cook, Alexander Madison, and Boone, you're set, you're solid, and then you got Amir Abdullah maybe to keep him on as a return guy, and you can use him in change of pace and time when you need. I don't think this is the best running back depth we've had in years. And
definitely.
So
I think you look at even at the fullback position, Blasingame is looked really good.
He's got to make CJ Ham, doesn't he?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I kind of feel bad for him too, as if he were to get cut, just because I think there's only 2 teams that have a traditional fullback anymore, and so it's not like the market would be huge for him. But he's almost a hybrid guy himself, and he's
that's why they like him. He's good size. He played both in college, fullback and running back, and how great would that be on your team? And he's made plays every time they put him out there. I think he's a practice squad guy. I really do.
I can almost see him as like in the catch game being the replacement for David Morgan, just in strange first downs with a big guy lumbering down the field. But he's more adaptable than CJ Ham is. I mean, CJ Ham is a lock for sure. Great blocker.
Joe, that maybe that allows them the opportunity to entertain calls from Houston, because they have Blasingame that could be a 4th running back, and he's already proved that he can catch the ball. And I don't know what he is as a blocker, but I suspect he's probably pretty good, and he's got this versatility. Position flexibility is huge in this league, and maybe that's something they can do, and they can. But I wouldn't give up Boone for something other than somebody that could really bolster, be a great second team guy, either on the offensive line or maybe cornerback or linebacker, just something that not just another project, but something that you can plug in when you need to.
Especially with Dalvin Cook's injury history. I mean, you have Alexander Madison, who's a rookie and who's been unproven. He's looked steady, but Boone is just that. That's the argument. He's really steady, but he's shown the ability to break some runs and catches too. So he stepped his game up from last year. Last year he reminded me a little bit of like a Leroy Horde, not size-wise, but if you need 3, the adage, you need 1 yard, he'll get you 3. If you need 5 yards, he'll get you 3. This year he just looks like he has an extra step. Granted, he's also playing against a lot of backups. We have a game tomorrow against the Bills. If anybody in upstate New York, Vikings fans listening to the show, go to our website, Vikings Territory or Purple PTSD. You'll see an article posted shortly, which should be up by the time of the show if you're listening to the show. Or just click on the banner on Purple PTSD for Ticket Club. Use the discount code SKOL PTSD, so SKOLPT, S as in Sam and D as in dog, and you will get a free 1-year premium membership. It's a $50 value, and then you can buy tickets for that game without any crazy quote-unquote convenience charges or fees, which is pretty cool. But yeah, it's it's the fourth preseason game. It's arguably the least interesting, unless you're like us and you're really way too deep into this in lieu of having any friends.
Oh, we'll be watching. We'll be watching.
Totally. What are you most looking forward to in that regard? We touched on a lot of stuff.
I want to see, I think I want to make sure that it's Mannion who comes out of the gate and is the starter, and I'm sure he will be, and that will decide that. And then I want to see just how they're allocating reps and starts and what have you, because that's really going to tell you a lot of what they're thinking. And I want to look at Browning. I know where he's finally going to get on the field, and I'd like to see what he can do and see if the game's not too big for him. But other than that, I'll be drinking beer. So
and it explains the Vikings situation to a T right now. But the special teams coach Marwan Malouf said that what was going on with Vedvik was completely unacceptable, and that he understands that, and that he hopes that he gets lots of chances on Thursday night. So I'm looking forward to that. I want to see some more out of the Norwegian kicker. Hopefully they'll have some different ranges of kicks too. It's pretty weird to be saying that I'm looking forward mostly to field goal kicking, but that's where we are as people who follow this Zimmer regime, and it's one of those things where I said this last week, where when you focus on something too much, you almost make it worse, like a dog potty training or something. Like you just get you psych yourself out or something, and so I think that's the problem. But we'll see. Hopefully that'll figure itself out. I do really also want to mention our new message board / social media stuff really quickly. It's a little in a good way. There's a lot to it, a lot of facets to it. So once it grows, it's going to be really exciting. But I've been mainly focusing on the message board because that's what most people are used to, and that's where the growth is going to start. So it takes 2 seconds to create an account. Go to purpleptsd.com. That's where it's all hosted. But we also have a Twitter-like function, an Instagram-like function, a live chat for games, groups, a global activity wall like Twitter, where you can follow hashtags, make friends, customize your profile, direct message people. It's really, really cool, and Joe's been on it a lot, and there's a lot of content. Our writers are there debating different topics. There's all the new Vikings news. If you're just looking for a place to get all the news from all the sources, it's there, fantasy stuff included. So check it out. It's going to be pretty fun to be there this season, and I'm super excited that that's something that we're focusing on now. But yeah, this has been the Morning Joes for the 28th of August. I appreciate all the new listeners that we've been getting on iHeartRadio and other places. It means a lot to us. We've been doing this now for a few years, so it's really kind of validating to get traction. And I don't know if anyone at Bleacher Report listens, but they've been posting the show on Bleacher Report lately, and that's just really awesome to us. I feel like that's kind of validation that we're on the right track, I would say, Mr. Oberly. So thanks for everything you do as well, man. So yeah, it's been really fun despite all the negative news. But yeah, we'll be back next week. Keep an eye on our social media for when we're going to be going live, probably 9:30 or 10:30 on Wednesday. But this has been Morning Joes. Skol.